Welcome back to the Adam Kramer Show, where we ask, analyze, and argue about all the hottest pro-life topics. Today, I'm joined by Juan Pablo Brand,
Thank you for having me.
my good friend and pro-life advocate, as well as the founder of GreatLife Teens, Myah Abraham. Both great people and both great leaders in the pro-life community. So, Juan Pablo, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about why are you pro-life?
So I'm pro-life. I've always been surrounded by very strong people, and they've really inspired me. And especially in my more recent teen years, you really start opening your eyes to these things and realizing just what's going on in this world and how bad abortion is, right? And I've had plenty of friends. Two of them are here today, right? And they're truly inspiring, and you see this and it's a problem and you want to make a difference. And especially in our generation, it's something we have to do.
Right. I completely agree. And so you've prepared a topic for us to discuss today.
Yes.
Would you mind just giving a little introduction to what we're going to be talking about on today's podcast?
So what I would like to talk about is, for now, not focusing on abortion, but focusing kind of in general and our world and where we have been in the last couple decades, and how we have slowly been changing the dignity of the human person, and how that has been degrading of people, how it's being shattered, and it's changing who we are now,
right.
And just that,
and for the future generations to come as well. It's
sure.
going to definitely have an impact on them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, all this stuff has been going on since, the sexual revolution, and, Humanae Vitae is really just like a calling to respect the dignity of the human person, how contraceptives don't acknowledge the dignity of the human person, and they don't, they're not the meanings for which they undermine God's plan.
Right.
And
For sure.
it's just,
yeah.
and that's basically the issue with all of this, undermining God's plan. You'll probably hear me say it a lot on the podcast, how sin is really just undermining God's plan for human life.
Right.
So I completely agree with you with how being pro-life is not just about abortion. There's so much more to it. There's so much more.
100%.
It's really just about respecting the dignity of the human person, because when you see euthanasia, that's killing an elderly person because they're not worth taking care of anymore in the eyes of the culture, in the eyes of euthanasia advocates. And with assisted suicide being like a big thing, because now if somebody asks a medical professional for a pill, they have to give it to them. That's something that's just absolutely terrible. And it also goes to, the rise of fornication and pornography, and how none of this values the dignity of the human person the way God intended. So this is very religious based, which is good.
Yeah.
We need more of this, especially. But we also should look at the secular consequences that we've encountered, we encounter because of this. Like you were saying, the destruction of the dignity of the human person, and the destruction of what family life should look like, the community of persons, the relationship between the man, the wife, and God, and the child. This is truly just everything that the sexual revolution brought about, everything that happened in the past 50 years was brought about by just the will of the human will and the human concupiscence taking over the will to be with God in heaven.
Yeah.
And it's very harmful to our communities with, all this sex education in schools, because they're being taught what has developed over this time that these things have become relevant. And do y'all have anything to say about like the consequences that we've seen?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many little things that are like, it's a domino effect, right? That at the moment you don't think, oh, it's not that bad, right? If this person will most likely die in 3 months, why spend all the money to keep their life there,
Right.
right? And things like that just, it seems little at the time, but that's huge. That changes how everyone thinks, and it's a slippery slope. It really is, and it causes more problems out of it, and it changes the dignity of us, right? Like we don't value each other as we have in the past, right? And how God intended us to value each other, right, in his own image.
Yep.
And it just breaks it completely. And abortion, like the start of new life, and cutting that off, that's a huge thing. And it's terrible. Yeah. And it's definitely a slippery slope.
And we can see how we know how bad it is, because we can literally trace it back all the way through the different phases and all the different steps that it went through.
Yeah.
From the legalization, from Roe v. Wade in 1972, to modern day, when President of the United States, Joe Biden, just repealed the Born Alive Act. It's just, you see the shifts in power between the Republicans and the Democrats, and the shift in culture from like what we now would see as conservative 50s. Like, because back then, as we've talked about in previous episodes, back then it wasn't called pregnancy. It was called being with child.
Yeah.
So we can see how definitions of terms and how definitions of life have all just basically equaled out to the detriment of the dignity of the human person.
Yeah, we don't value anymore what it means to be a human, and the fact that there is something so unique and special about being a human, and we can just get rid of that life just because, and because we no longer value that.
And I think it's also the normalization in the culture.
Yeah.
How
normalized.
Well, of course you can have sex outside of marriage, and look, we have abortion, so you don't have to, deal with your consequences, deal with God's plan for human love, which is for unity and procreation. And when you undermine that is truly when sin comes in. Yeah. So I want to do an analysis of where we are now compared to where we were then. And how do you think we can get back to where we were? Back to a culture of love, a culture of acceptance and, dignity of the human person being integrated into every aspect of human life. How do you think that we can get back there? One thing that always comes to me, obviously, is prayer. Prayer is the best weapon against all these things. And there are government officials who are working to weed out abortion. It's like, it's happening. I strongly believe that we'll be able to see the end of abortion. And that's a very deep hope.
Even under the Biden administration. But going back to to the whole community thing, just, give us an analysis of the dignity of the human person and how that has been destroyed, and just tell us what your thoughts are on that.
How to get back.
Yeah. So really for years, forever, there's really been this slight kind of nudging of that humanity, of the dignity of persons, and it's sin, right? And sin is always there, and temptations are always there, and it's when we fall into those temptations, falling into those temptations destroys families so easily. And going back and stuff, abortion has been around for forever, right? It's always been a thing, and it's really disgusting, and it's changed very much, but now the issue is that it's being very normalized, especially in the United States, right? And our generation is the generation to stop it, right? And it's on the peak of almost kind of tipping over, getting legalized mostly everywhere. And that is it's not slowly, it's pretty fast.
It's really fast.
Hurting our families, and you can see it anywhere, right? And relationships between fathers and mothers and their children, and just everyday interactions with strangers too.
Yeah.
It can change all those very, very little things that aren't actually little.
Yeah.
Right. And like a big problem is seeing a human person as an object to use for your own pleasure instead of a human to get you back to heaven, get you to heaven.
Right.
And so it's just difficult to come back from this culture. I just kind of want to discuss some ways that we can do that. Obviously, go right ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna cut in real fast. One of the biggest things that I have always been learning more about and just try to instill in my life is vulnerability. Because the thing about abortion, what it does to a society, and this is specific to abortion, but this could be applied to almost every instance, is what the devil tries to do is he tries to let us live in our shame. He tells us we're alone, and we are not meant to be alone. You know, we are made imago Dei. We are made in the image and likeness of Christ, of God, and that in of itself is a relationship in the Holy Trinity, and we are meant to be in relationship, and as human beings that's what we long for. But yet the devil tells us, because of the shame that abortion, that eugenics that puts on us, it tells us that we're by ourselves in this fight, that we can't do anything, and we can't be vulnerable, and we're not able to be vulnerable and reach out to people, and then we're not able to fight sin. Because and I talked about this in an episode before, is it really takes a community to raise a child. And here's the thing, the only reason a woman gets an abortion is because she's insecure in her relationship with her significant other or the relationship with the community. Because when she doesn't have any support, she's like, well, the easiest thing for me to do is to get rid of this baby in my womb, when in fact she doesn't have to. She has a support around her. But the only way that we as human beings can connect is through vulnerability and through being able to talk to each other. But we've created this environment because of this destruction of our community, where we tell ourselves, I can't tell them that because I'm not perfect like they are on social media, or I've done this thing, so I can't go out there and be and talk to these people and connect with these people. And so that's like a huge thing. And that's what, and that's the thing, when we degraded marriages, we're like, well, because we've normalized having sex out of marriage has no value anymore.
Right.
And so there's not that value in that that relationship of a marriage. And so there's no and that, I mean, that's really what, that's what marriage is. That's what, the crucifixion is. It's this ultimate sacrifice of vulnerability. And before, and so I really think as a community, that's something that we really need. We need to be able to be like, I'm not perfect, but let's have that conversation. Let's connect. Let's be a community, and then we can be pro-life. Then women will stop having abortions, because I don't think any woman is like, the first thing on their mind is like, I'm going to kill my baby. No, it's just because they don't have those means to do so. That's a huge thing for me. It's like we've lost a sense of vulnerability, of connection, because we think our world is so great and we can all do it by ourselves, and so we are stuck with this individualism. And we think we don't need God because we have, because we have contraception, because of this agenda that's been put on us. But it's this the devil's agenda to tell us, no, you're by yourself,
right,
and you cannot fight sin by yourself. It takes a community, and it takes the church. And so that's my rant. I think
that's great. It's also, that got me thinking that in like today's world, where it's funny because like we're told to like always share your feelings, right, and your problems and stuff, and it's like have an open space, right, a free place to talk. And
right.
But what we're doing today with having abortion and stuff, you're taking some of those feelings away, right? You're taking some of those. I'm trying to get what I'm saying.
Themselves.
Right. Yes. You're numbing.
It's a desensitization
problems. And it's not a problem in the first place, right? People see it as a problem, right? Having a baby, right?
Yeah.
A burden,
right? They see it as a burden, and it is not, right? And it, like, we're imperfect, and we always have been, and we never will be perfect until we make it to heaven, right? And that is just something that we have to realize and live in our imperfection, right? in God's image and
Yeah.
share his lights with each other. And having abortion, euthanasia, and all this stuff, it's killing our society. And
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, like Bishop's homily about perfection.
Mhm.
Like we think that we have to be the most perfect person to the world, and so and he was saying, that's why we try to we are aborting all our children with Down syndrome. It's because we aren't okay with imperfection. We can't see imperfection in ourselves or in those around us, and so we just want to get rid of it, when in fact we can realize, like other people are struggling with this too, or like not like that's more specific to this, like feelings and stuff, but like Juan Pablo was saying, was like, it's that we've numbed ourselves to this. So the thing is, when you numb the good stuff, you also are like numbing the bad stuff. And so, numb the bad stuff, you're also numbing the good stuff. And so we've just instead of addressing the problem at the beginning, we're numbing all of it. And so we're not even to like feel that, or not even able to feel that. We're not able to just talk about it or connect about it. And so we just live in that shame.
And it's a shell that you're living in, and it's away from God and away from other people, and you won't, and there's that connection that's truly missing. And it's visibly hurting a lot of people and families.
And it's just like the devil is trying actively to instill shame and fear, especially because when a woman finds out that she's pregnant and like she doesn't have the means to support it, obviously fear. How am I going to provide for this child? And the problem is that the devil also instills the fear, but he also gives the apparent solution, which is not the solution in any way, but the way that he's played it out, the way that Bernard Nathanson has, advertised Planned Parenthood and abortion is just the easy way out. Like it's just not good in any way. And dangerous to the
and it's because
generations.
And I think Juan Pablo said this earlier, it's because we were saying that that it's a burden, that it's something that like a baby's a burden, it's something that we should be scared of. And we talked about this in another episode. So like we have to bring the joy back to having a child. We have to be able to raise our flags from the window when a child is born. It needs to be something exciting, something that we are all excited about and joyful about. But it also goes back to pro-lifers being more active about, here are your other options, because the devil's going to get to them first, or they're going to be like, this is your only option, this is the only way out. But it's not a way out actually at all.
It's not. And the way that through the sexual revolution and through contraceptives and abortion, we've basically stepped into God's shoes. Like we can prevent life with contraceptives. We can also end life. But the thing is, it's when the separation, it's like the destruction of the community first. It's like you were saying, taking God out of the picture is detrimental. Because when you take him out and you try to step into his shoes, you try to be the maker. You try to be the maker of your own life. You try to control every little aspect of it. Then you're becoming like God. And that's when sin comes into play. So
definitely. And like going back to what Myah says and about the fear of bringing a child into this world. Yes, it's got to be scary for a mother, like no doubt, right? And it can, depending on your financial states, that's truly difficult, but that's life. And life is something that you cannot take away, and it is beautiful. And that child, years to live, decades to live, right? And
a life to live,
and experiences to experiences, friends to make, and he or she can find them. And it's, as even being hard, right? Just life is beautiful, and you can't take that away. And that's it's
and I think it goes back to like this the community, you know, it is hard, and it does take, you know, a community. It really takes a community to raise a child. And so we have to bring ourselves back together and be able to fight for life and help, you know, with life, because bringing a child into the world is it isn't the easiest thing in the world. But as a community, like, we have to come together and foster that community, that help for that woman. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And then just how taking that away, just completely going back to shattering the human persons, our community, a communion of persons. And we're meant to, as Myah said earlier, we were made in the image of God, and we're meant to be each other and be in a community and in connection with one another, right? And doing that and taking away life, that's destroying that connection completely, right?
Yeah, because, like, you know, every time we kill a child, it's like we're taking a little bit more love out of the world. We're taking Christ out of our world, because each person is, you know, is Christ for someone, you know, and we're taking that chance. We're taking that away. And yeah, it's just really, I mean, it really makes me think, you know.
It's detrimental to culture and to the future generations. And so it's our job as the pro-life generation not only to weed out abortion, to get it out of here, to show the beloved children of God that it's not the only way, and it's not the way. That's not the way to go.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to bring back an entire culture from being fallen so far.
For sure. And it's something it's scary thinking about the future, right? At the pace this is going. That, like, for people that actually want children, right? That actually want to start that life, and them in a community of people that are against that, or against them in their financial states, bearing children, right? They might think that couple is being cruel, right? As being just, how can you do that to that kid? But how can you take that kid's life away, right? You give him a life, you give him so many opportunities that he or she can live on and have blue eyes, right? Have talents, have get a job, right? And there are all so many possibilities that if you just take that away, just because you're financially unstable, or you're not ready, or it's going to be too hard, or you're by yourself, right? It's very harming.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes back again to the toddler example. It's, if that child had all the when you're pregnant with a child, you had all the resources, you had everything, but then when they were 2 years old, you lost all those resources. You lost your spouse. You know, it was just the mom and her child, and her 2-year-old child. Should you kill that child because you don't have the means to take care of them, because you don't have they're not going to have the perfect life you want them to have? And the answer is clearly no. So, you know, it goes back, like, if the only difference between the 2-year-old and the baby in the womb is age, then how can you take away that child's chance of life, even if they don't have all those means?
Because one day, no matter what, they will get to that point in their life when they're as old as you, when they're, you know, having children of their own, like to have a job, to have a spouse, to live out God's plan for them. When you're the one taking it away, it undermines God's plan.
Yeah, and something that I really like to think about is that people look at our world and each person, right? It's easy to look at the world as like being like a plane of sand, right? Like each person is like a little grain of sand, right? And that's it. But I like to think of it more, and I think it's better to think of it more as a massive web, right? That everything is connected, right? Connected to different parts that connect to other parts, right? And it might not be very strong connections, right? But it's a connection there, right?
Yeah.
And having that cobweb, to say that spreads, makes a big spread, and it goes all over the place.
Right.
Sorry about that. And just turn it off. Yeah.
And Yeah, because if you have, it's like the structure of a house, pillars.
Yeah.
If you take out one pillar, then another part of the house is weak, and so, and it just keeps going on.
Yeah, and it's like abortion is taking this web of humanity, and it's taking pieces out of it, right? And it's stopping God's plan, right?
Yeah.
And it's super unhealthy, right? And people, like a person can affect so many, like in a lifetime,
Yes.
affect a ridiculous amounts of people, right? It may
Affect
not look like
history,
it,
yeah.
right? It changes. You can change a person's life just by smiling at them, walking,
Yeah.
right? They might not feel like their life has been changed. Maybe they do, but it's these very little acts that just mean so much, right? And when you're taking away a life, that's stopping all those little acts, right? That's stopping that cobweb from spreading and affecting people and spreading God's will, right? And spreading God's light and just general goodness, right? And living life beautifully, right?
Right. And like, I think that, especially with abortion, it's just terrible to think that this future generation is going to be growing up in the culture of death, the culture of the only person I need to please is myself.
Yeah.
And that it's just terrible. And I think another thing of it, another consequence from it is the destruction of the family. And the family is such an important role in community, because when there's not a stable father figure, or it's a single parent household, that leads to trauma. It can lead to crime and, turning to other things turning to other coping mechanisms, like drugs. And it's just detrimental. And so for the devil's advocate portion of today, I want you to play the part of someone who is looking to change this culture, looking to change this, and present to me, the opposition, the devil's advocate, why it's so bad, why these things that obviously make us happy are so terrible. So my question to you is, so why can't I do with my body what I want if it's not damaging anyone else? It's just to me. Like, so why can't I abort my child if it's just my child and no one else's? Why is that so bad to you? Why do you hate that so much?
Yeah. So it's not just your body, but it's your soul too, right? And those two things you can't separate them. It's one, right? Separating them is bad. And by saying I can do what I want with my body, you're falling into these temptations, right? Temptations of pleasure, right? Of pleasure and drug use and all this terrible stuff. And that affects your soul a lot, and that can affect who you are as a person. And like, not looking at it at a religious perspective, but how you think and how you go about life and how you just talk with other people and live with other people. It may not seem like it in the moments, but that kind of adrenaline rush to get that pleasure it's there. And when you fall into that temptation of taking that affects who you are, and that can affect how you think, and it can make you feel like it makes you selfish, really. And you start thinking about yourself and what do you gain from these things, right? And you don't think about what other people gain, right? You start thinking about yourself first, and that's a huge barrier to put there, and that can really harm yourself.
But don't you just think that it'd be just better if everybody just minded their own business and let everybody go on their way?
No, yeah, well, we live in a community of people. We need each other, and you need to have a human interaction with people, and that's what makes us human. And without that, who are we? Like, what do we do? And it's essential. We need to have that community with people. You can't just be by yourself. that's been proven, like depression. It's absolutely terrible. People are lonely out there,
Yeah.
right? And they're lonely for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons being that they value they want pleasure, right? And they seek this pleasure out, which shuts out other people, right? And then living a life like that is really sad, and it's really affecting people, and not only affects one person, but can affect a variety of people when they see that.
So you're saying I'm supposed to give up what makes me happy so that I can make other people happy? So that if I'm just, fornicating and I don't want to have a child, why can't I use contraception? Why is that affecting anybody else's life? Why can't I do that in my life?
Well, it's because it's affecting, it may not seem like it in the moment, but it's affecting the society, right? It's that cobweb again, right? That it's constantly affecting more and more people. And not saying that you should do things that make you unhappy just to make others happy, right? Happy is it's a easy word to use, right? And there's a lot of things in that. But having that urge to do things for your own sake, right, makes you selfish, as I said. And it may not seem like it, but it cuts you off from people, and it's life damaging, and it affects our dignity as a whole of everyone, right? And you're not only hurting yourself, but all those around you. And life is about sacrifice. It is, right? We have to work to get things, and that's never been a doubt, and it never will be easy. Life will never be easy. But we just have to keep making those steps forward, even if it ends up being us crawling on the ground, right? We just have to keep moving forward, because if we don't, we fall into the state of loneliness, of being depressed, right? And you can see that in so many people, and it's really sad. And
yeah. Okay, well, I think you did a pretty good job of that. That was good.
I
That
tried.
was good. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm really glad that we had this conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Thank
good
you for
thing.
having me.
Yeah, it's a very unique conversation that not many
Yeah.
people are talking about.
For
How
sure.
pro-life is not just pro-life, but it's pro-eternal life.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what we're just trying to achieve for our culture and for the future generations.
And it's
to
a
come.
necessity. It's a necessity
Yeah.
that we really need.
For real.
Yeah. And I just want to say something like, the whole loneliness part you're talking about, like that's like affecting our society like no other. We have the highest rates of suicide. We have we have the most adults ever like taking, depression medicine, and it's because of loneliness. And it's because we separate ourselves from each other, because we tell ourselves, well, that's better for me, that's better for me, that's better for me. And then we lose connection. And like you said, like this inherent selfishness, it creates disconnection within our society. And that's, from everything from abortion to just like, I don't know, like literally like from abortion to just like taking like, I don't know, like a piece of candy from someone just out of selfishness, like literally from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. And we're fostering loneliness in our society, and we can no longer stand for that. And
there's just no love. And that's
the problem.
Love is needed, right? It's needed to live our lives, right? And to be human, truly.
We've lost what the great sacrifice of marriage is. We've lost what the great sacrifice of being a parent is. We've lost all those things, and it's our job to get it back.
And sacrifice comes with reward, always.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And it's all about, we have like, and it goes back to what Adam was saying at the beginning, it's this disorder of God, of God's will. Like we put our will before God, but like, we can seek pleasure, right? But it has to be in the in the right order. And sin is all about, disorder and how we
My
order that.
order, not God's.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the way God intended it to be.
Yeah. It's not like we have to live our entire life in pain and like, oh, I can't do anything.
Believe it or not, God wants you to be happy.
Yeah.
He really wants you to be happy, but he knows the things that will truly make you happy.
Yeah.
And that's not what the world is telling you.
Yeah.
So from all of us here at GreatLife Teens, thank you very much. It's been a great episode.
Yeah.
And I hope to have you on again.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
100%.
definitely be seeing you again.
Oh, maybe one more time. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys.
People knew that slavery was wrong, and they found out eventually. But when are people going to wake up to the fact that abortion is horribly evil? And
I know, right?
And just the fact that they're totally dehumanizing them, but and also at the same time, like they're dehumanizing them to the fact that they're saying you can only be human if you can feel pain. That in and of itself is dehumanizing. So it's like their argument of dehumanization, if that's even a word, like dehumanizes them, even like it takes it again and again, and so I just thought it was interesting. So
right.
Yeah, exactly.
And like this is also a big argument. This is, I think, the root of this. People disagreeing about what constitutes a human being, what makes a human being. Because you can make the argument as a pro-lifer, you can make the argument that it doesn't uphold the dignity of a human person. But if they don't believe that it's a human person, that's not going to stick.